Hello, nonprofit friends and family and interested bystanders. It's Friday, it's 12:30 Eastern Time, and that means it's time for us to spend just a couple of minutes at the end of the week talking about nonprofit technology, trying to make it behave, trying to make good decisions about it, trying to get a return on investment. And today we're going to talk a little bit about database and CRM migrations and how to get through those projects relatively unscathed. If you don't know me, my name is Maureen Welbioff. I'm a nonprofit digital strategist and technology coach. And just about every Friday afternoon, I go live on the socials and share some tips and tricks that I have compiled over many years of working with all kinds of different technology platforms and apps and software and databases and all different kinds of teams and nonprofit organizations. So we're all just a little bit unique. So today's topic, how to smooth out your experience, reduce the pain for CRM and database project migrations or migration projects. These are complicated projects. They are time-consuming projects. They are tricky and very detail-oriented. So I have a whole bunch of best practices and things that at any point in a conversion project, you could apply to your situation. They don't all work at the beginning. They don't all work at the end. They don't all work at the middle. These things can be used at any point. It's good if you've got them in your arsenal when you first start out or when you're planning one of these projects. But if you're in the middle or close to the end and not sure you're going to make it out alive, you can use some of these tips too. So CRM and database projects, conversion, migration, cutover, implementation, we use those terms to mean my data is over here and I use it over here, or maybe in a couple of places, or 1,000 spreadsheets. And I'm going to move all my supporter data, partner data, gifts, events people have registered for, communication preferences. I'm going to take all that data from where it lives today and move it into a new house. A house I have not spent much time in. So I'm going to kind of be feeling my way through and making decisions in a hopefully informed, but definitely not fully informed manner. A client of mine that I worked with many years ago shared something that has stuck with me. And she said, data migration projects have 3 phases. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Our new system can do that. Our old system can't do that. Oh, wow. We are excited. So, oh, wow. Second stage is, oh, shit. Oh, shit. This thing doesn't work the way that I thought it did. Or, oh, shit, our data is dirty and we're going to need to add some time in the middle of our migration project to actually tackle it. Oh shit, our data is in 700 places and 1,600 secret spreadsheets, or people quit, or something happens. And that is kind of always a risk, and it's usually a reality. So as we walk through the stages of a conversion project very briefly, keep those 3 stages, oh wow, oh shit, okay, in mind. Write them down. You will pass through them all. It's like the 5 stages of grief. We got the 3 stages of a database migration project. So what happens in a database or CRM, constituent relationship management system conversion project? So usually 5 stages happen, one after the other. Sometimes some things happen in parallel. So the first thing you're going to do is discovery, and decide how you need the system to be set up. You're going to have meetings with your implementation partner or your project manager, the new system that you're moving into, and they are going to ask you a whole bunch of questions. They're going to look at the stuff that you've got now. They're going to evaluate your data. They're going to give you some orientation and a lot of structured questions about how you're going to need the new system to be set up and how you plan on using it. It's definitely a collaborative phase. They have information about the database that you don't have. You've got information about your data, your business practices, your mission, your work tools that they don't have. So discovery is everybody shares. And then at the end of that, you should come out with a requirements document, a plan for configuring your new system that you usually have to sign off on. Like, you want it built like this? You want your front door painted this color of red? Sign off, because I'm about to go buy the paint. So you're going to have to nail some things down for your vendor and your team to actually start setting some things up so that you can get ready to move your data in and start using it. So discovery and configuration, specifications, stage 1. Stage 2 is actually setting up the new database. How are you going to record soft credits in here? How many custom fields do you need? What do you want to have in address line 2? They're going to, in combination with your team, depending on the approach to the migration, they're going to be setting things up for you. Like, okay, this is how you wanted the dashboard to look. Okay, this is how you want a supporter record to look. In some cases, setup is around other functionality that the CRM or database may provide, like email marketing templates, email sign-up forms, donation forms, event registration forms, reports. System configuration and system setup means whatever you are going to use once it's ready to be used has to be in place, has to be tested, has to be ready for public and staff consumption. And that system setup time can take a while. We're going to talk a little bit in my tips about how long that might take. Then you got data work. So you've set up the system. You now have to move your data from wherever it's living today into the new database or CRM. And that's a multi-step process. So sometimes, or many times, what happens is a small set of records that you know well is identified, and those records are imported into the new system. Just those. You could have 1 million records, you're only going to be playing with 20. Those go into the new home, and you are instructed to click around and look at those records and make sure that all the data showed up in the places you expected it to. If you made a rule that address line 2 is only going to have an apartment or a unit number, that better be all you see. Sometimes, the last name or the combo last name can be converted over a little in interesting ways. So it's important before you move everybody in that you do a test import and you correct any problems. And usually there's things to correct. You correct any problems before you or your implementation partner move everybody else in. So you sort of preload it, finalize it, and then the following imports will follow whatever rules or changes you put in place during your data testing. Data load, the big data load, often happens in a couple of passes. Records, people, first name, last name, contact information, etc. Basics about people. Any tags or segmentation that you've applied to those records in your old system should be present when the records are moved into the new system. So people first. Second is organizational records, partners, sponsors, other nonprofits that you work with, sometimes vendors. Any organization records get moved in second. Relationships are then built. those old soft credits, or, if you've got a funder, a grant funder, a foundation, and you've got 7 people who work at that foundation, you're going to relate those individual records to the organization record. So you got to build those relationships, and then you're going to move over transactions. All those donations, all those pledges, all those grants, all those event sponsorship dollars, whatever it is, you're going to move the records of the transactions in. So it's usually a multi-pass phase, and it's time consuming depending on the state of your data and how many records you're actually moving. Then you're going to, in parallel, usually through much of the other phases, you're going to be doing training. Your team, you are going to be learning how to use the new system so that once it's configured and your data's moved in, you're able to start using those tools. Don't skimp on training. That's like a pre-tip that I will give you. Please, please pay for training. Don't just watch a video and think you're going to be able to drive this new fancy car, because you might crash or run out of gas unexpectedly. You finish up your training and then you cut over or you go live. That means you stop using your old stuff. It's dead to you. Maybe it's still sitting there for a little while, but you're not actively using it to manage your work. You're only going into the new system, the new database, and managing records there. That other thing could kick around for a while. Maybe you need to export more stuff out of it to serve as an archive in a CSV someplace, but your team and you are going to only be using your new tools. So that's cut over, launch, conversion, and then you need a little support after that is done. So those are the stages that just about everybody goes through, no matter what product they're moving out of and what product they're moving into. So that's kind of the great equalizer. We hear stories about how terrible these projects are because they can be. I'm not going to lie to you. They're challenging projects. They're actually not one of my favorite projects to be involved in. And yet here I find myself being kind of an expert on how to manage these projects really efficiently and effectively so everybody comes out better on the other side. So my 4 main tips for you, again, can use them at any point in a project. Some are more naturally aligned with one phase or another. And it doesn't matter how big your team is, how much money you're spending, what you're moving out of or into. So the first tip to save your sanity and make these things less painful is have a reasonable timeline. People underestimate greatly the amount of time that these projects take. Even if you're moving from spreadsheets to your very first CRM, these projects are going to take on, at the low end, 3 months. Low end, 3 months. If somebody tells you you can move in a week, that is probably not an accurate picture. The long end of these CRM or database migration projects could be a year. I rarely see them go longer than 12 months, even if we're talking about millions of records and a mammoth organization moving out of and into very sophisticated databases and CRMs. So 3 months minimum. If you can pull it off well in less than 3 months, let me know. 12 months for like a really, really big move where there's a lot of decision-making and configuration. So give yourself a reasonable time frame. Don't plan on doing this in a month. It's not going to happen. It's going to cause a lot of pain, and you're going to wind up needing to either cut corners that will bite you or explain yourself to leadership and maybe even pay more if your technology partner agreed to some very accelerated, maybe unreasonable migration timeline, and it turns out that it doesn't work. You're going to have to pay them to work for more weeks in many cases. So reasonable timeline, be good to yourselves. And take into account the other stuff you have going on. This isn't like you can just erase every other thing that's on your plate. You're going to have to dedicate some time to it, but not all. Second pro tip to make this less painful is to assemble an internal project team and manage this thing like it's actually a project with roles, responsibilities, deadlines. I don't care if you use Slack or Excel or a Word document or looks in the hall. You've got to keep people on track. And that means you're going to need a project manager internally, somebody who is going to be able to really keep up with who's doing what, when is it due, how's it going. This is a fatal flaw that I see many nonprofit organizations make, which is not to have somebody who's kind of leading the charge internally, just relying on the implementation partner or the software company to keep you guys on track in-house. Not going to work. You need to put some PM person, even if they're the earliest in. They have no reporting relationship with anybody. They're a low person on the org list, but they are empowered to help keep this project rolling along the way that it's supposed to. So you need a project manager, and then you can make some early agreements internally about two things. One is who's going to be informed versus who's going to be involved. Your CFO may want to be informed, not involved. If you start involving them, things are going to slow down. They're going to feel like they're doing more than they expected they would be doing. It's going to be a problem. It absolutely will affect how smoothly the conversion project goes. So think about your team and people who will be actively involved in the work. Those are the involved people, right? I've got tasks. I have responsibilities in this project. And then there's people who just need to be informed. Maybe some people need to be mostly just informed, but when it comes to a certain aspect of your conversion project, they're going to be involved. Good example is email templates, right? If part of your new tool set is an email marketing tool, your communications team is going to need to participate in deciding how those email templates are going to look, getting trained to use those email templates. They'll probably be very interested in audience tagging and segmentation and grouping so that they can send the right message to the right people. But when it comes to the fundraising stuff or the reporting, they don't care about that stuff. You can just keep them informed. They don't need to be involved in those meetings or decision making. And that leads me to the second thing. You need to identify how you're going to make decisions. Who's empowered to say yes or no? And when is that person then expected to run their thinking past somebody else before a final decision is made? I see this happen all the time, completely innocently. People approve stuff, and then right before the database is going live or in training, someone is feeling some sort of way about a decision that was made without them. Pause button. Let's talk about it. I need to understand how you guys arrived at this decision. And I don't know if I would have decided that way. Turns into a thing that can take 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks to deal with at the wrong time. That input should have been gleaned and agreed to during discovery, not at the end when you're like 2 days away from cutting over and going live in your new CRM. So project team, project manager, informed versus involved. How are decisions about how we use this thing going to get made? The third tip I've got is for your sanity and survival, which is you're going to have to take some things off your plate. All of us are doing way more than our 35, 37 and a half, 40 hours, other duties as assigned. However you work with your own responsibilities and tasks and initiatives at your job, you don't have space for a project like this right now. You just don't, which means you've got to make it. So that means talking to your boss, talking to other people that you do things with and for, and having some really honest conversations about what is not going to get done or what might get done quarterly and not monthly. What's going to have to get transferred over to someone else? And it's not just you, like whoever the you is that's watching this, anybody who's doing more than a couple of things sometimes in a conversion project. I show up to a meeting once a month, not a big deal. But if you are part of the project team that is involved, you're going to need to make space for this. And this is not a time for magical thinking. This is self-inflicted pain. If you think that you're going to have time, you're going to find 3 to 5 to sometimes more hours a week to dedicate to this conversion project, then I don't know what organization you work for. I don't know anybody who's just got like 5 hours hanging around to do with what they want in a given week. So that takes conversation and honesty, and don't be a hero or a shero, because you're going to need to be freed up. Your brain's going to need to be freed up. Your time's going to need to be freed up for this conversion to go well. And that's an inside job. Your vendor can't help you do that. Your implementation partner can't help you do that. You have to take ownership and do that yourself. And if you're the project manager or the boss of somebody who's heavily involved in this conversion project, you should do it with them on their behalf, and sometimes even with their bosses. Look ahead. Like, okay, we're all full right now. It's the end of October. Look out in your calendar and block out time proactively, and do not give it away. I need time to review our data. I need 2 3-hour blocks, and I'm going to book meetings with myself that I will not give away. So again, it's an inside job. The other piece with this is to be realistic with your software implementation partner. Tell them how many hours you've got a week to dedicate to this thing. Tell them when you've got a blackout week. Thanksgiving and Giving Tuesday, don't assign me any tasks. We're actually going to hit pause for a week, and then we'll gather right after Giving Tuesday has occurred, and we can pick up and move on from there. So be reasonable with your software vendor. If you think their project plan and timeline is either too ambitious or aggressive or impossible or too slow, collaborate with them. That's what you're supposed to be doing in a project like this. It needs to be aligned with what you are able to do, and not do on a midnight some night or on a Saturday or a Sunday. You're not going to do your best work. You're going to start to get resentful and crabby. The final tip that I've got that helps everyone involved make it through a project like this with their sanity intact and happy is to be a good partner. Be a good partner internally and externally. What that might look like is clear communication. If I don't understand what my software vendor is talking about, well, we could set up your custom field like this or like that or like that. Ask them. Ask them what they would do. Get some context so that you can actually make a good decision. So be a clear communicator. Don't radio silence people inside your org or outside your org. If somebody's waiting for something from you, or you're waiting for something from someone else, ask. Be pleasantly persistent. Don't just watch that deadline go by. And if it's your deadline, you're like, oh, please let no one ping me because I was supposed to do that last week and I don't have time and it's Friday, and so I'm 2 weeks late. Get ahead of that stuff. Be proactive. Say, listen, I thought I was going to be able to do it. Something unexpected hit my plate. My kid was out sick. Whatever winds up happening, I had to be home. And renegotiate your due dates. Don't just like flinch. And if you need something from somebody else, being a good partner means not jumping down people's throats. Somebody's a day late with something, I will send an email that says, hey, Jack, just curious, I was expecting to get X from you. Can you give me a heads up about when I might be able to get it? If they don't write me back after that email, then I know something is up. My antenna are wiggling like crazy, and I will probably book a meeting with that person rather than going back and forth by email. See, like, what's going on, Jack? And make a new plan. That's the other thing about these projects is they are not going to go as expected. You have to be ready for plot twists and zigs and zags and unexpected outcomes and delays. So bake some of that stuff into your project plan and timeline. Don't expect everything to go perfectly. Don't make it weird when something bubbles up. If you start getting that way because one thing went unexpectedly, it's not realistic for you to expect perfection every single step of the way in a project like this. So be a good partner, be communicative, develop relationships with the people that you're working with, external and internal, form kind of a team. Most of the time you come out of these projects, even if they've been adventurous, in a more bonded way. Like, look what we did. Shout out to Emily. Emily did X, Y, and Z thing, even though she was busy building our end of year campaign. Recognize and appreciate when people are doing what you need them to do. And it doesn't hurt, even if it's like baseline. Like, yeah, he missed his last 3 deadlines, but man, Ralph hit this deadline. It was really important that he did. Go, Ralph. Really great. So have a reasonable timeline, assemble a project team with roles and a project manager, take other things off your plate, make space for what is a major nonprofit technology project at any scale, and be a good partner internally and externally. Try to work well with people. Don't get angry. Use low tones. My colleague is not trying to make things harder for me, is a good mantra, or put a Post-it note on your monitor or something like, this person is not trying to make my life hell. Problems pop up, we can solve them. I've got a couple more bonus tips in these last few minutes. And for folks that are watching live, if you've got questions about CRM or database migration projects, I would love to answer them. So please type them in the comments, and hopefully I will see them pop up on my StreamYard comments area of my screen. So happy to be of assistance if you're like in a sad place around your migration. Bonus tips for y'all today. Clean your data now. I don't care if you think you're going to move in 2025. Clean your data. Don't wait until the last minute. Don't move dirty data into your new shiny system. Keep it clean, chip away at it. It's a task that never goes away, but don't just like put it in the closet and think you're going to deal with it later. It costs more time and money to clean data as part of a data migration project, database migration project. So keep it clean. Maybe that will be your New Year's resolution for 2023 is in January, I'm going to work on the A's in my database, and I'm just going to resolve any duplicates, maybe deactivate people who haven't given or taken an action in a long time. Keep your data clean. Second thing, bonus tip, is buy the right implementation approach. Every single software company or implementation team does it a different way. So if you've been through one of these, don't expect the next guy to do it the same way the last guy did, unless you're working with exactly the same people and exactly the same systems. It is breathtaking to me how many different approaches to migration, the work division of labor between them and us, the nonprofit team, the ways people get trained varies dramatically. So make sure that you've got a clear picture in your head of what's on you, what's on them, how is this going to get done, all this work, and make sure that if you want this company, that you're negotiating the right approach to migration support and the extra help that you might actually need that maybe they don't normally deliver, but you toss them a few extra dollars, they'll be willing to meet you and deliver things the way that you need. This is a place that I see people make mistakes. They buy the product and they don't really think a lot about the moving in. So you need to know as much about the moving in and the product when you're making a decision. Expecting unexpected, I already talked about that. Just be ready for it. And it's going to happen more than once. So I like to use the term plot twist because it's like, instead of like, oh no, like this horrible thing happened. Plot twist, we can't use the system this way. That means we're going to have to rethink that other thing. It's just going to happen. These things are complicated. Make sure you're communicating out to the rest of your organization, especially end users who are not going to be actively involved in your conversion project. They are curious and maybe a little worried about whether they can use this new thing. So make sure they know how you're doing, decisions you've made, progress that you've made, dates of training, all that other kind of stuff. And then pay for training and support, please. Don't just skimp on that. It really does make or break how satisfied you and your organization leadership are with the tools that you use. So I hope that was helpful. Please share this around your team if you're in the middle of picking a new CRM or you're budgeting for a new CRM come next calendar year or next fiscal year. Keeping these things in mind, I think, will help you have a better experience all the way through. And at the end, you're going to feel tired and maybe a little drained, but also proud and exhilarated that you did it. You navigated some of these, oh, wow, oh, shit, okay, phases. So with that, my nonprofit Accidental Techie fam, I will let you go. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Friday, an awesome weekend. Monday is Halloween. Should be interesting to see who's in costume and who isn't. And I will be back here next Friday at 12:30 with another topic and some tips that you will find helpful when it comes to taming your nonprofit tech. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you soon. Take care.